At 11:26 p.m., trauma, or 3 at St. Marrowfield Medical Center looked like every room that tried to pretend pain was tidy. Stainless steel shone under surgical lights. Plastic curtains hung stiff and clear. The air tasted faintly of disinfectant and something colder like a winter coin pressed to the tongue. Megan Hart paused at the threshold long enough to catch the rhythm. Monitor beeps in steady intervals, a suction machine idling, a ventilator waiting like a held breath. On the wall, a digital clock flipped its seconds with quiet authority. She stepped in. Her scrub cap pinned her strawberry blonde hair tight. No loose strands, no jewelry. Her badge read, Megan Hart, RN, in block letters that seemed louder than she felt. She kept her shoulders relaxed, chin level, eyes moving only as much as necessary. She had learned that nerves invited questions. Questions invited attention. Attention invited mistakes. Behind masks, people smiled with their eyes. Someone's laugh came out soft and clipped, the kind that stayed polite until it wasn't. A resident leaned toward another voice, muffled by fabric but not by caution. New one. Transfer, the other said. From some civilian clinic, I think. A third voice, older, confident. Dr. Patrick Hale snapped his gloves on with a sharp pop like punctuation. Great. Clinic girl. Hope she knows which end of a retractor goes where. The group chuckled. Not cruel enough to be reported, not kind enough to be ignored. Megan took her place near the instrument table. She checked the layout without touching anything. Clamps aligned, sutures stacked, sponges counted, labels facing forward. Order mattered in this room. So did the unspoken ladder that lived between people. She kept her gaze on the steel. Reacting only fed the fire. She did not give them much. Dr. Tessa Nguyen drifted to the far side of the table, pretending to read a chart while she read Megan instead. Her eyes were sharp, curious, half amused. You've done trauma? Tessa asked like it was casual. I've assisted, Megan said. In a real trauma or, Tessa pressed. The question carried a hook. Megan lifted her eyes for the first time. Calm, polite. In rooms that wanted to be ORs. Tessa blinked. The corners of her mouth twitched, unsure whether to laugh. She chose not to. A circulating nurse passed behind Megan and murmured low enough to sound like advice. Don't mind Hale. He bites when he's nervous. Megan didn't answer. She watched Dr. Hale's hands. A man who trusted his own certainty. In the reflection of a steel tray, her face split into fragments. Freckles, pale lips, eyes that didn't give away where her thoughts lived. The speaker overhead gave a spit of static again. Megan's jaw tightened for a beat, then released. She kept counting anyway. 2 exits, 1 oxygen shut-off, 1 crash cart, 1 phone on the wall that nobody used unless everything else failed. Outside the plastic curtains, a distant siren rose and fell, swallowed by the building. Norfolk nights carried sound out there. You could hear things coming if you listened. A faint crackle slid through the intercom overhead. Static, just a breath of it, then silence again. Nobody else seemed to notice. Megan did. Her eyes flicked up, then back down. Dr. Hale approached the whiteboard and scanned the schedule. Next is a lap coal, he said to the room. Unless trauma blows that up. Trauma always blows it up, a resident muttered. Another chuckle. Megan adjusted the cuff of her glove, smoothing it down. The latex squeaked under her fingers. Small sounds were louder at night. The hospital felt thinner after midnight, as if daylight staffed it with certainty and darkness, staffed it with improvisation. She moved to the sink and began the surgical scrub without being told. Soap brush rinse, hands held higher than elbows, water running clear. She watched the bubbles slide toward the drain and kept her face blank. A pager beeped somewhere outside the room. Footsteps scuffed in the corridor. A gurney wheel squealed on the polished floor. Ordinary sounds, but fast and getting faster. Dr. Hale was talking again, filling space the way some people filled silence. How long were you at that clinic? He asked, not looking at Megan. 2 years, Megan said. And before that, Megan kept scrubbing. Travel. Dr. Hale finally glanced at her. His eyes did the quick scan that doctors did when they wanted to place someone. Not just competence, status. Well, he said, this is a different world. You follow directions in here. We do things a certain way. Yes, doctor, Megan replied. She dried her hands and stepped into a gown. The fabric rustled. She tied the waist. The strings landed with a soft snap against her hip. In her pocket, a small shape pressed against the cloth. A golf tee, plastic, green. She felt it there and didn't touch it. Dr. Hale snapped his fingers at the circulating nurse. When's transport? Soon, she said. Ed has a couple waiting. He sighed and leaned back against the counter, arms folded. If it's another drunk with a broken wrist, I'm walking. Sure, someone said, and the group laughed again. Megan checked the suction canister, then the cautery unit. She ran through the room the way she ran through her own body at the start of a shift. Fingers, eyes, breath, exits. She noted the crash cart. She noted the angle of the doors. She noted where people stood when they were relaxed and where they would stand if something went wrong. The intercom crackled again, a thin scraping sound, like paper dragged over a microphone. Still no announcement. Still no one reacting. Then a different sound pushed its way in. A shout, short and sharp. A door slamming back on its hinges. Wheels hitting the threshold hard. Megan turned before anyone else did. The corridor light sliced across the floor as the doors swung open. Cold air rushed in with the smell of rain from outside and something metallic underneath a hint of copper that did not belong to the hospital's clean palette. Trauma coming in, a voice called. The gurney appeared in the doorway, moving fast enough that the sheets lifted at the corners. Someone ran alongside it, hands, slick eyes, wide words spilling between breaths. Megan didn't catch the details yet, only the urgency, only the way the room's confidence snapped into a different shape. Dr. Hale pushed off the counter and stepped forward. The residents straightened. The laughter vanished as if it had never existed. The gurney hit the room wheels, rattling over the seam in the floor. White sheets were soaked through with dark red spreading outward in heavy blooms. The smell followed stronger now, copper and heat. Megan's hands lifted ready, not rushing. Her eyes found the patient's chest, rising unevenly beneath straps like the body was fighting itself just to keep air moving. The paramedic's voice came again, closer, urgent. Navy SEAL. Multiple penetrations. Pressure unstable. Lost him twice in the ambulance. Megan watched the blood, the way it seeped, the way it gathered, and something in her chest tightened with a familiar, unwelcome focus. The room moved on instinct. Gloves snapped. Gowns rustled. The overhead lights seemed to brighten, though nobody touched them. The beeping on the monitors quickened as hands reached in from every side. 2 large bore lines, Dr. Hale said. His voice held steady, but his fingers moved too fast, as if speed could replace certainty. Get blood ready. O negative if you have to. Type and cross is running, the circulating nurse replied. The paramedic kept talking while the team transferred the patient to the table. 1 to the lower right abdomen, 1 left chest, possible exit posterior. He decomped twice. We got him back with compressions and epi. Megan's eyes tracked the sheet as it peeled away. The fabric made a wet sound like paper tearing, and the copper smell rose again. Not sharp now, but thick. It clung to the back of her throat. The patient's torso was strapped down bare under the harsh light. Bruises mottled his ribs. A puncture wound sat between muscle and bone, on the left side small and neat like a pen mark. The blood around it did not fan outward the way it should. It gathered, it sank. Megan felt the pattern before she named it. Pooling, not spreading, a hidden space filling up. Pressure, Dr. Hale asked. 80/40 and dropping anesthesia said. He's fighting the vent. The patient's jaw clenched around the tube. His hands were restrained, but his forearms flexed against the straps anyway, as if his body expected hands to become threats. Dr. Hale glanced at the wound and reached for the scalpel. We are going in. If it's cardiac, we crack. If it's lung, we pack. The resident on the right, a young man with tired eyes, leaned in. Do you want ultrasound? No time, Hale snapped. He's about to code. Megan stayed half a step back, close enough to see far enough to be ignored. That was usually the safest place to stand. She watched the rise and fall of the chest. It was uneven like a wave hitting a wall. Dr. Tessa Nguyen moved to Megan's side, whispering as if she were sharing gossip. That's a lot of blood for such a clean entry. Megan did not turn her head. Not if it's going where you cannot see. Tessa frowned. Where do you think it is? Megan's eyes remained on the left chest, behind. Hale made the first incision. The scalpel slid through skin with a clean resistance, then deeper. The suction hissed. A red sheen appeared, then a surge. Pack, Hale said. Suction, retract. Sponges disappeared into the wound. Hands crowded each other. The monitor screamed once, then steadied, then pitched into a faster rhythm. That is not slowing, anesthesia warned. He's not compensating. Hale's shoulders tightened. His eyes searched for a source. He could point to a vessel. He could clamp a problem that would behave like the textbooks promised. Where is it coming from? He muttered almost to himself. The resident answered too quickly. Intercostal, maybe. Then why can't I see it? Hale's voice rose a half step. It was the first crack. Megan felt her pulse settle into that narrow, bright lane that did not allow room for anything else. The room smelled like steel, warmed by friction. The noise narrowed to a few sounds. Suction, beeps, the soft slap of bloody gloves against skin. Hale widened the incision, chasing the red. The blood kept coming. Not in sprays, but in steady, stubborn volume. Pressure is 50, anesthesia said. You're losing him. Hale cursed under his breath. Damn it, clamp, get me a better view. Megan leaned in just enough to see the edges of the wound. The blood did not behave like surface bleed. It did not crawl across tissue. It rose from deeper and filled the space like water finding a low spot. She spoke without raising her voice. Doctor. Hale did not look up. Not now. You're chasing surface blood, Megan said. She kept her tone neutral, almost gentle, like she was calling out a mislabeled instrument. The trajectory suggests posterior damage. Hale's head snapped toward her. His eyes flashed irritation first, then something like fear that he masked with anger. And you know that how... Megan held his gaze for one beat. Because the pooling is confined. It is not spreading. That is a space filling, not a vessel you are watching. A resident scoffed. She's guessing. Megan did not react. She watched the patient. The patient's chest hitched, then stilled for a fraction. His eyes fluttered. Not the slow flutter of someone drifting, but a sudden sharp opening, as if he had been listening for a door. He turned his head against the tape and the tube. His gaze swept the room in quick slices, counting faces, corners, exits. It was not confusion. It was assessment. Hold him, anesthesia ordered, pushing medication. He's waking. The patient's hands strained against restraints. His shoulders tensed, ready to sit up despite straps and pain. Sir Dr. Hale said louder, the way some people raised volume when they lacked control. You are in a hospital. Stop moving. The patient's eyes locked on Hale for half a second, then slid away. His brow furrowed like he did not recognize the authority in a mask and a cap. Don't. He rasped around the tube, fighting the air. The sound was raw, scraped out. Don't touch me. Megan heard the words for what they were. Not a demand, a reflex, a memory that lived in the body. Sedate him, Hale snapped. He's going to pull his lines. The patient twisted again. The monitor spiked. The suction slurped, hands pressed down harder, trying to hold him in place. Easy, Megan said. Her voice cut through the noise without competing with it. She stepped into the patient's line of sight. She did not crowd him. She placed herself where he could see her face without turning. Her eyes stayed steady. Her hands stayed visible. Look at me, she said. You're not there. The patient's gaze caught on hers like a hook. The tension in his shoulders did not vanish, but it shifted. Less wild, more directed. His breathing slowed by a fraction enough to matter. Hale stared at the exchange, confused and annoyed. Why is he responding to her? No one answered. Even Tessa, who always had an answer, stayed quiet. Megan spoke close enough for the patient to hear over the hiss of the vent. Stay with me. You're bleeding faster than you feel. The patient's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in recognition. His throat worked around the tube. His lips moved again, shaping a sound that was not meant for strangers. Hale returned his focus to the wound, his jaw set. He followed the blood, again digging where it offered itself. The monitor beeped faster, then faltered, as if it could not decide whether to keep going. Posterior, Megan said more firmly now. Open posterior. Hale bristled. I do not take orders from a nurse. Megan did not flinch. Then you will lose him. The words landed flat, without emotion. That was what made them dangerous. They were not a challenge. They were a report. Hale's nostrils flared. He looked at the monitor. He looked at the wound. He looked at the pool of blood collecting where his sponges could not keep up. Anesthesia spoke again. Voice clipped, already preparing for the worst. We're on the edge here. Call it. Hale's mouth opened, then closed. His pride fought for air. Megan kept her eyes on the patient's face. She could see the strain in his jaw, the effort to remain present. His gaze never fully left hers. Tessa shifted, stepping closer to Hale. Her voice was quieter than before. He's right. He's not responding to us. He's responding to her. If she sees something... Hale cut her off with a look. He hated being cornered. He hated being watched. Megan said one more thing, softer than before, almost private. The blood is not talking to you. It is telling you where it is going. Hale's shoulders sagged a fraction, like a man setting down a weight he had refused to admit he carried. He changed his approach, angling deeper, moving toward the back of the space. For one terrible second, the wound opened wider, and the blood surged, a thick rush that made the suction whine. Clamp, Megan said immediately. Hale's hands froze, then obeyed. The instrument slid into place. He clamped where Megan's eyes had been pointing, not where his pride had wanted. The bleeding slowed. Not stopped, but slowed enough for the room to breathe again. The monitor steadied. The frantic beeping found a rhythm that did not sound like a countdown. A resident exhaled loud enough that it sounded like a sob he refused to own. Hale stared at the clamp as if it had appeared by magic. His eyes flicked to Megan. How did you know? Megan did not answer. Her gaze returned to the patient. The patient swallowed, wincing hard. His eyes tightened at the corners, the way men tried to hide pain by making it smaller. He looked at Megan with a strange intensity, as if he were trying to place her in a picture he had burned into memory. His lips moved again around the tube, a rough whisper that barely made it past the plastic. Megan leaned closer, tilting her head. The sound that came out was broken, but certain. It carried weight. It carried history. It carried danger. Megan, he rasped. Hale stiffened. Tessa went still. Even the suction seemed to hush. The patient blinked hard like he was fighting a tide. Then he forced the name out fully, each syllable dragged across pain. Megan Hart. The name hung in the air longer than it should have. Megan Hart. It was not loud. It did not need to be. It cut through the room with the same clean finality as a scalpel. Dr. Hale's hands stayed where they were clamped and steady, but his eyes lifted. He looked from the patient to Megan, then back again as if the sound had rearranged the map of the room. Tessa froze with a sponge in her hand. A resident stopped mid-reach for a suture. Even anesthesia went still for a beat, fingers hovering over a syringe. Megan did not answer. Her face did not change much. That was the trick of it. The only sign was a small tightening near her jaw, a muscle that jumped once then settled back into place. Her gaze stayed on the patient's eyes. "Focus on breathing," she said softly. "Don't fight the tube." The patient's stare sharpened. His pupils tracked her like he was pulling her into a frame he refused to lose again. "You," he rasped. The words scraped out around plastic and tape. "You're alive." Dr. Hale cleared his throat, trying to put authority back into the air. "Sir, you're confused. You're under anesthesia. You need to remain still." The patient's head shifted as far as the tape allowed, eyes never leaving Megan. "No," he said, not confused. The monitor beeped once, a stubborn reminder that time was still passing. Megan reached for the IV line and checked it with practiced hands, giving herself something to do besides stand inside the name. Her gloves were slick with blood. The copper smell clung to the latex. "Your pressure is stabilizing," she said to the patient, calm, as if she were reading off a chart. "Stay with that." His chest rose against the vent, then fell. The rhythm was not peaceful, but it was controlled. Tessa leaned closer to Megan, voice low. "Do you know him?" Megan did not look at her. "I know what he needs right now." That answer was not denial. It was a boundary. Dr. Hale stared at Megan in a way that was new. His earlier smirk was gone. What was left looked like a question he did not want to ask. The patient swallowed again, pain tightening his face. He pushed the words out anyway as if he had carried them too long to keep them inside. "They told me," he said. "They told me our medic didn't make it." A metal instrument clinked against the tray as someone's hand jerked. The sound was small, but it made every head turn. Megan's fingers paused on the IV port for half a second. She resumed slower now. The patient's eyes shone with something that was not sedation. It was anger held on a leash. "They said she went down," he continued. "They said she stayed with us until evac. They said she was gone before we lifted." Dr. Hale's mouth opened, then closed. He glanced toward anesthesia as if looking for confirmation that this was a hallucination he could ignore. Anesthesia's eyes stayed on the monitor. "He's oriented," she said, cautious. "His speech is rough, but he's tracking." The patient's gaze flicked once across the room, assessing the people now as obstacles, not helpers. Then it returned to Megan. His voice gathered strength, not much, but enough. "You pulled me out," he said. "Behind the wall? You said keep pressure, keep breathing. You said my name like it mattered." Megan's throat tightened. She lowered her voice. "You're not in that place." His eyes did not soften. "I know where I am." Dr. Hale stepped closer, trying to reclaim the scene. "Sir, we need to finish closing. You're bleeding internally. You need to remain still." The patient's breathing hitched. "You almost killed me," he said, blunt. His eyes cut to Hale. "You were cutting the wrong place." The resident flinched as if struck. Hale's face flushed under the mask. "We stabilized you." "No," the patient said, then nodded once toward Megan without taking his eyes off Hale. She did. Silence spread. Not polite silence. The kind that made the room feel smaller. Megan kept her hands moving. She adjusted the drip rate. She checked the dressing. She watched the clamp. She did not look at Hale. Looking would invite the conversation she was trying to avoid. "Focus," she told the patient again. "Your job is to stay alive." The patient's eyes searched her face, pleading for something she would not give him in front of the room. "They wrote you off," he whispered. "They told us you were dead." Megan leaned in just enough that only he could hear her clearly. "Don't say more," she said. "Not here." His brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because names got people found. Because the wrong ears heard everything. Because the past was not a story, it was a door." Megan did not say any of that. She just held his gaze and let the warning live in the quiet between them. Tessa watched Megan now, like she was seeing a different person, layered underneath the scrubs. "Megan," she said, hesitant, as if testing the word. "What is he talking about?" Megan straightened. The room waited. She could feel the golf tee in her pocket like a small thorn of plastic, a ridiculous object to carry into a trauma, or a stupid, harmless thing that had once been a joke, once been a promise. She did not touch it. Dr. Hale's voice came out controlled but thinner. "Nurse Hart, do you have any connection to this patient?" Megan met his eyes for the first time since the name landed. Her expression was even. Her tone was professional. "He's in critical condition," she said. "That's the connection that matters." Hale's eyes narrowed. He wanted to push. He also wanted to finish the surgery without losing a patient in front of an entire team. The monitor beeped again. The sound held the room to its job. Posterior bleed is controlled, Megan said, returning to what she could prove. Clamp is holding. Chest tube output is slowing. Watch pressure. Don't let him fight the vent. Hale hesitated, then nodded once, almost unwillingly. Close, he ordered, softer than before. Hands moved again, carefully this time. Sutures pulled through tissue. The suction quieted. The frantic pace eased into a methodical one, the way storms did when the worst had passed, but the sky still carried threat. The patient's eyes stayed on Megan through it all. He did not blink much. He looked like someone trying to memorize a face before it was taken away. You stayed, he whispered, voice breaking on the first word. You stayed when the radios went quiet. Megan felt the old pressure behind her ribs, the one that came with heat and sand, and a sky that did not answer back. She pressed it down. She gave him the only thing she could give safely. Save your strength, she said. You're not done. He managed a weak nod, then winced as pain flared. His hand tugged once against the restraint, then relaxed. The room seemed to breathe again. A resident wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of a forearm. Tessa swallowed, hard eyes on Megan's hands, as if trying to understand where a calm like that came from. Dr. Hale finished a stitch and glanced up, his posture different now. Less towering, more wary. What did you mean, he asked the patient, when you said she was your medic? The patient's eyes narrowed. She kept us alive. Megan's voice cut in, quiet but firm. That is enough. Hale stared at her, surprised by the edge. He did not argue. Not because he agreed, but because the air had shifted. Something had entered the room that did not belong to hospital hierarchy. The intercom crackled overhead. Static thicker this time, rough enough that several people finally looked up. A voice came through, clipped and careful. Attention staff, security to the surgical corridor. Military personnel have entered the building. The words did not echo. They did not need to. They landed like weight. Tessa's eyes widened. Militaries? A resident whispered. For him. The patient let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh, though it carried no humor. His eyes slid to Megan again, and there it was in his expression. Not triumph, not fear, just certainty. They always come, he murmured. Megan's hands stilled for one heartbeat. Then she resumed, finishing a dressing, smoothing tape down with 2 fingers, as if the motion could keep the room normal. Outside the plastic curtains, footsteps began to change. Heavier, more deliberate. Not the quick scurry of nurses. Not the rolling rush of gurneys. Boots. Dr. Hale turned his head toward the doorway. His shoulders tightened. The residents went quiet. The circulating nurse moved instinctively closer to the wall phone. Megan did not look at the door. She kept her eyes on the monitor. She kept her hands close to the patient. She listened to the static fading from the speaker, replaced by the clean, measured sound of people who did not ask permission before they entered. The doors at the end of the corridor opened with a soft sigh that did not match the weight of the footsteps that followed. Boots, measured and unhurried, crossed the threshold outside trauma or 3. The sound was different from hospital shoes. It had edges. It carried discipline in the rhythm, like a metronome set by someone who had learned to move without wasting motion. Dr. Hale paused mid-stitch. The resident holding suction froze with the tip hovering over tissue. Tessa's eyes flicked from the incision to the doorway, then back as if she expected the room to punish her for looking away. Megan kept her gaze on the monitor. The numbers mattered more than the noise. The clamp held. The pressure held. The ventilator hissed, patient compliant now, in a hard, exhausted way. The plastic curtains at the entrance parted. A man stepped into view in a navy dress uniform so crisp it looked like it belonged in a frame, not under surgical lights. His rank stripes caught the white glare and threw it back without apology. Behind him came 2 others in dark suits. No visible insignia. No hospital badges. They did not scan the room like tourists. They scanned it like they already knew the exits. The Navy officer did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Which one of you is Megan Hart? The room fell into a deeper kind of quiet. Not the working quiet of focus, but the human quiet of people waiting to see who would be singled out. Dr. Hale straightened, his shoulders set into authority again, reflexive. This is a restricted area, he said. You cannot just walk into a trauma OR. The officer's expression did not change. He held the same calm you saw in people who had been told no by lesser doors. I understand, he replied. His gaze moved once across the team cataloging, then landed on Megan. We are not here for the patient. That sentence landed harder than if he had said they were. On the table, Lucas Vaughn's eyes opened a fraction. Not enough to sit up, not enough to fight, just enough to confirm what his body had already felt. His mouth moved around the tube. The sound was faint, but it carried through the hush like a match strike. Told you, he rasped. Megan did not look at him. Not yet. She focused on the vitals and the lines on the small, ordinary tasks that kept a man from slipping back into darkness. She adjusted the drip with 2 fingers. She checked the dressing. She listened to the suction canister. The copper smell was still there, warm and persistent. The officer stepped closer, careful to keep distance from the sterile field. "Ma'am," he said gentler now, as if he had realized his words could be weapons in a room full of open skin. "We need to speak with you." Dr. Hale's jaw tightened. "Because she is in the middle of a procedure." "I will finish what needs finishing," Megan said. Every head turned. The words were not loud. They were simply placed in the room, like a tray set down with intention. Megan met Dr. Hale's eyes. There was no defiance in her face, no apology either. Her gaze held the flat certainty of someone who had watched seconds carry consequences. "He is stable for now," she continued, calm, clinical. "Posterior bleed controlled, clamp is holding, close, and monitor his pressure for the next 5 minutes. Watch chest tube output. Do not let him buck the vent." Dr. Hale hesitated. It was a small moment, but it felt like the world shifted on it. Then he nodded once tight. The hierarchy in the room did not vanish, but it rearranged itself in a way nobody spoke out loud. Megan stepped back from the table and peeled off her gloves. Blood streaked across the latex as it came away. She dropped them into the bin. The sound was soft. She untied her gown and slipped her arms free, careful not to brush the sterile field. Lucas watched her like a man watching a door close in slow motion. "You don't have to," he whispered the words muffled by the tube, but clear in intent. Megan leaned in just enough for him to see her face. Her voice dropped to a level that belonged to them, not to the room. "Stay alive," she said. "That is still your job." His eyes tightened. He gave a shallow nod. Gratitude lived there, and something older, heavier, as if he had been carrying the knowledge of her name like a stone. Megan straightened and turned to the Navy officer. The two men in suits remained still shadows with lungs. The officer made a small gesture toward the door. "Just a few questions," he said. Dr. Hale started to speak again, but the sound died as soon as it formed. Tessa's eyes followed Megan with something like disbelief. The residents stared at her back as if the scrubs now looked different, as if they had been laughing at a person with a hidden uniform. Megan walked out into the corridor. The doors sealed behind her with a soft hiss. The hospital noise rushed back in phones, ringing carts, rolling voices, calling names. Life continuing in a way that did not ask permission. Yet the space around them felt held as if the air had been told to stand still. They moved down the corridor past framed posters about hand washing and patient privacy. The posters looked naive under the fluorescent glare. Megan could still smell copper on her hands, even though she had washed. Some smells stayed. The officer walked at her side without crowding her, as if he knew how people reacted when cornered. "You were declared killed in action," he said. "Not accusatory, simply factual. After an operation in the Gulf. Your unit was listed as wiped out in a classified incident." Megan kept her eyes forward. The hallway lights reflected on polished floors, creating the illusion of clean lines. She watched her own shoes pass through the reflections, steady, controlled. "That was the report," she replied. "You did not correct it," he said. "No." The officer studied her profile. Up close, his calm looked earned, not theatrical. He was mid-40s, clean-shaven, skin weathered at the edges, the sort of face that had spent time on decks and tarmacs. His nameplate read, "Win." "You were a medic," he continued, voice low. "Embedded with special operations. Highly decorated. Then you disappeared." Megan did not speed up. She did not slow down. "I was discharged," she said. Wynn's mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost not. That is one way to phrase it. Two men in suits followed a few steps behind. They did not speak. They made no effort to look casual. They did not need to. Their presence did the talking. They reached a window overlooking the ambulance bay. Outside rain traced thin lines down the glass. The streetlights painted the wet pavement in pale gold. An ambulance idled with its rear doors open, gurney rails gleaming. Paramedics moving with the tired competence of people who had seen too much. Wynn stopped. Megan stopped with him. "You did not come here for history," Megan said, her voice measured. "No," Wynn admitted. "We came because a survivor identified you in a civilian trauma, OR." Megan's gaze stayed on the bay. A paramedic lifted a red biohazard bag into a bin and tied it off. The motion was neat, routine. She felt how much she wanted routine to be enough. "He was dying," she said. "And you saved him," Wynn replied. "That complicates things." Megan turned her head just enough to look at him. His eyes did not flinch away. "Why now?" she asked. "I have been gone a long time." Wynn's voice softened, but the words did not. "Because ghosts are useful until they are not." Megan's jaw tightened. The muscles in her neck held, then eased as she exhaled through her nose. And because that mission, Wynn continued, was buried, along with the report, along with the names, including yours. Her reflection in the window stared back at her. Scrubs instead of camouflage, badge instead of rank. The same eyes, the same stillness. She looked like a woman who belonged in a hospital. The reflection did not show the other version of her that lived under skin. Then why dig it up? Megan asked. Wynne met her gaze in the glass, not looking at her directly, but not avoiding her either. Because the man you saved is asking questions, he said, and questions spread. Megan watched the ambulance lights flicker on the wet pavement. Red and white distorted. For a moment, the reflections looked like signal flares. She shifted her weight slightly, the smallest tell, and Wynne noticed. His voice dropped another notch. Someone just made contact, he said. Megan did not ask how he knew. She could feel it in the air, the way the hospital seemed to tighten. The earlier static from the intercom came back in her memory like a warning that had been too quiet for most people. Wynne continued. You were listed as killed in action. No body recovered. No survivor listed. Yet here you are. Megan's eyes lifted to his direct now. And you want to know why I did not correct it, she said. Wynne held her gaze. Yes. The corridor hummed with fluorescent electricity. Somewhere a PA announcement called for a lab tech. A nurse laughed at a joke that had nothing to do with this hallway. Life kept moving around them, ignorant and loud. Megan's voice came out even, because the report was not a mistake, she said. Wynne's expression tightened just slightly. So it was a decision. Megan nodded once minimal. A decision that worked, she replied. Wynne's eyes stayed on her, calculating. Until tonight. Megan did not deny it. She looked back through the glass at the ambulance bay, at the rain, at the ordinary world that kept pretending the past stayed buried. Wynne spoke again, careful with each word. You were declared killed in action, he repeated, as if saying it twice might make her answer different. You did not correct it. Megan's hand moved toward her scrub pocket without going inside. She felt the shape of the golf tee through the fabric, hard and small, and she left it there. No, she said again. I did not. Wynne's voice lowered, almost kind. While Megan kept her eyes forward, because the people who wrote that report, she said, did not write it to honor the dead. Wynne did not look away when Megan said it. The corridor light made a pale stripe across his cheekbone. Rain tapped the window with a steady, patient rhythm. Somewhere below, an ambulance door shut with a hollow metal sound. You think it was written to protect someone, Wynne said. Megan's eyes stayed on the ambulance bay. A medic outside tugged a pair of gloves tighter, the snap faint through glass. The motion was familiar, in a way she did not like. I do not think, Megan replied. I know. Wynne's voice stayed even. Then you also know why we are here. Megan turned her head slightly. You are here because a man who is supposed to be quiet said my name out loud. Wynne's gaze did not flinch. He is not just a man. He holds clearance that makes people nervous. Megan's mouth tightened. So it is not about truth, it is about control. Wynne let out a small breath, the kind that was not quite a sigh. Truth is a form of control, he said. So is silence. Behind them, the two men in suits kept their distance, quiet and watchful. One of them stared at the corridor intersection as if expecting someone to come around the corner too fast. Megan felt the hospital around them again. The normal noise had thinned. People were not rushing as much. A pair of nurses slowed near the far doors, eyes flicking toward Wynne's uniform, then to Megan's badge. They did not speak, but the air carried questions like smell. Wynne glanced toward the trauma corridor. We should move, he said. Megan did not ask where. Her body already knew how this went. When the past wanted you, it did not request an appointment. They started walking. As they passed the nurse's station, the charge nurse looked up, lips parting like she meant to greet Megan, then thought better. Her eyes went to Wynne's rank, then to the men in suits. She did not smile. Her hand hovered near a phone. A resident stepped out of a side hall with a clipboard, saw the group, and paused. He swallowed and looked down at his shoes. People made space without being told to. That was its own kind of command. The overhead speaker crackled, a brief scrape of static, then a clean voice. Security, please report to surgical corridor. Megan's spine stayed straight. She kept her steps the same length. They reached a door marked staff only. Wynne keyed in a code. The lock clicked. The sound felt too final for something so small. Inside was a narrow passage that smelled less like patients and more like paper and bleach. A back corridor. The kind built for moving bodies and equipment without being seen. Halfway down, Wynne stopped at a closed door with a small frosted window. Megan Hart, a voice said from inside, calm, female, familiar in the way authority could be. Come in. Wynne opened the door. The room was a consult space that pretended to be neutral. Beige walls, a table bolted down, 2 chairs, one slightly better than the other, a binder on the table, thin and neat. No family photos, no coffee cup. The fluorescent light did not flicker. It simply hummed. A woman stood by the table. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back tight. Eyes sharp, not cold, but trained. Her posture was still, as if she had learned to let movement be a choice. This is Special Agent Dana Mercer, Wynne said. Mercer's gaze went to Megan's badge, then to Megan's eyes. Ms. Hart, she said. She did not call her Megan. She did not call her nurse. She used the name like a file label. Megan did not correct her. Agent Megan replied. Wynne stayed by the door. One of the men in suits remained outside. The other leaned against the hall wall, visible through the frosted glass as a blurred shape. Mercer gestured to the chair opposite her. "Sit," she said. Megan sat, but not the way people sat when they felt small. She placed her hands on the table, palms down. Her nails were short, clean. The skin at her knuckles was dry from repeated washing. Mercer did not sit. She opened the binder and turned a page as if it mattered. The paper looked too crisp. "We are not here to arrest you," Mercer said. "Good," Megan answered. "I have a patient." Mercer's lips twitched, almost approving. "He will live because you intervened." Megan watched her. Mercer's voice carried a hint of something beneath the official tone. Not sympathy, recognition. Wynne spoke from the door. "He identified you in front of a civilian trauma team." Megan's eyes did not move to him. "He was bleeding out," she said. "He was not thinking about your protocols." Mercer closed the binder gently. "Protocols are not what keep people quiet," she said. "Fear does." Megan's fingers pressed into the table a fraction, then relaxed. "So you came to remind me to be afraid?" "No," Mercer replied. "I came because someone else already did." Megan held her gaze. For a beat, neither of them blinked. The fluorescent hum filled the silence like water filling a cup. Mercer finally sat. She placed her hands together, fingertips aligned. "You were declared killed in action after an operation in the Gulf," she said. "The report was sealed above standard classification. No bodies recovered. No survivors listed." Megan's face stayed still. "Yet here I am." "So someone lied," Wynne said. Mercer's head tilted slightly. "Or someone made a decision." Megan's eyes hardened. "And now the decision is inconvenient." Mercer did not deny it. She slid the binder toward Megan, but did not open it again. "A survivor with high clearance recognized you," Mercer said. "He said your name." That reopened a file no one wanted reopened. Megan did not touch the binder. "Your file does not change what happened." Mercer's gaze stayed steady. "It changes accountability." Megan leaned back slightly. The chair creaked. It sounded loud in the small room. "You want motive," Megan said. Mercer nodded once. "We know pieces. We do not know why certain orders were given." Wynne shifted near the door. "Command wants to know if you are willing to consult," he said. Megan let out a short laugh that held no humor. "Consult," she repeated. The word tasted old. That is what they called it before they cut the radio. Wynne's eyes narrowed. Mercer did not react, but her shoulders tightened a fraction, a small tell she probably thought nobody would see. "Ms. Hart Mercer said we are not here to force you." Megan looked at her hands on the table. Clean now, but she still smelled copper. Or maybe she imagined it. Some smells lived in memory as much as in air. "If you are not here to force me," Megan said, "then you are here to convince me?" Mercer nodded again slow. "You do not have to return to service," she said. "No recall, no uniform. We are asking for a statement about what happened during Operation Salt Lantern." Megan's jaw tightened at the name. She did not flinch, but the muscle near her ear jumped once. Wynne said the operation was buried. "It was not buried," Megan replied. "It was burned." Mercer's eyes did not move. "They rerouted you," she said, testing the words. Megan stared at her. "You already know." "We know what the report says," Mercer answered. "We want what you saw." Megan's fingers shifted not quite toward her pocket, then stopped. The golf tee pressed against fabric like a reminder of something small that had survived when bigger things did not. Wynne's voice softened. "Why did you come back into a civilian hospital system?" Megan's eyes lifted. "Because I wanted to work," she said. "Because in a place like this, people die for ordinary reasons. Not because someone in an office needed a cleaner narrative." Mercer watched her for a long beat. "The hospital does not know who you are," she said. "They do not need to," Megan replied. "They will," Wynne said quietly. "Not now, but rumors are already moving." Megan's gaze slid to the frosted window. Outside, a shadow shifted as the suited man adjusted his stance. The hall smelled faintly of bleach and coffee from a distant machine. Mercer spoke again. "The people involved in that report," she said, "they are not all on the same side." Megan's mouth tightened. "Neither were we." Mercer held her gaze. "If you speak, you become a witness." Megan's voice stayed flat. "I already was." Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly. "Then why disappear?" Megan did not answer with words. She reached up and rubbed the edge of her thumb against her index finger, a small motion like she was checking for grit that was not there. Wynne said, "You were declared dead. You let it stand." Megan looked at him. "If you are asking if I was afraid," she said, "the answer is yes." Mercer's voice stayed calm. "Are you afraid now?" Megan looked back at Mercer. "No," she said. The word landed clean. It surprised even Wynne. Mercer watched her without blinking, as if she were measuring the distance between that word and reality. In the next room over, someone laughed. The sound was muffled by the walls, bright and careless. Megan's eyes flicked toward the sound, then back. The normal was always close, like a neighbor who never understood what lived on the other side of your door. Mercer reached toward the binder, but did not open it. "We need you to explain what happened that night," she said. "You do not have to name names yet. Start with the facts." Megan's voice dropped. "They changed coordinates last minute," she said. "They pulled air support. They told us to proceed anyway." Wynn's face tightened. "Who is they?" he asked. Megan's eyes stayed on Mercer, not on him. "People who knew it would fail," she said. Mercer's expression remained unreadable. "You have proof," she said. Megan let out a slow breath. "I had proof," she replied. "It did not survive the men who carried it." Mercer's gaze sharpened. "Yet you survived." Megan's shoulders stayed square. "Because someone needed a ghost," she said. Someone needed a clean ending that did not point back at the decision-makers. Wynn shifted his weight, his uniform creaked softly. "You are saying you were made dead on paper to protect someone," he said. Megan's eyes did not soften. "I am saying my death was useful." Mercer looked at her hands, then back to her face. "A survivor recognized you tonight," Mercer said. "He believes you were erased." Megan swallowed once. Her throat felt dry. "He does not know everything," she said. Mercer's voice stayed measured. "He knows enough to ask questions." Megan leaned forward slightly. "Then tell him to stop," she said. Mercer's eyes held hers. "We cannot." Wynn added, "He will not." Megan's gaze slipped to the door. For the first time, she seemed to listen past the room. The distant beeps, the rolling carts, a code announcement 2 halls away. The building felt too large to protect anyone. Her pocket vibrated. A short buzz like an insect trapped in cloth. Megan did not move at first. She stared at Mercer, then at Wynn. Neither of them spoke. Mercer's eyes dropped to Megan's pocket, then returned to Megan's face. "It is late for personal calls," Wynn said, mild. Megan's pocket vibrated again. She reached in and pulled out her phone. The screen lit her fingers, pale blue. Unknown number. 1 message. Megan's eyes scanned it once. Her face did not change much, but something in her gaze narrowed like a lens focusing. Mercer leaned forward slightly. "What is it?" she asked. Megan turned the phone so Mercer could see. The message was short. No greeting. No signature. "You should have stayed dead." The screen glowed between them like a small confession. Mercer read the message once, then again, as if the second pass might change the meaning. It did not. Her face stayed composed, but her eyes sharpened in a way Megan recognized. The look people wore when a threat stopped being theoretical. Wynn's jaw tightened. "How did they get this number?" he asked low. Megan did not answer because the question was a trap. Any answer would become a path. Mercer's gaze lifted to Megan. "When did you last feel watched?" she asked. Megan slid the phone back toward her own side of the table. "Tonight," she said. "Before I saw it." Mercer held still for a beat. Then she reached up and pressed 2 fingers to her earpiece. Her voice stayed quiet, but it changed. Less conversational, more operational. "Mercer to corridor team," she said. "We have a credible threat. Verify coverage on the ambulance bay and staff entrances. Keep it clean." Wynn looked at Megan, then at the door. "We need to move you," he said. Megan's eyes did not flicker. "Where?" she asked. "Somewhere controlled," Wynn replied. Megan let out a short breath through her nose. "Controlled for who?" she said. Mercer's voice stayed steady. "Protective custody." Megan's mouth pulled into something that was almost a smile, but it held no warmth. "That is what you call a cage," she said. Mercer did not flinch. "It is what keeps you breathing," she replied. Megan looked down at her hands. They were clean. They did not feel clean. Copper still sat at the back of her throat like memory, not smell. Wynn spoke carefully. "Ms. Hart, this is not about comfort. If the wrong people know you are alive, they will not stop at a message." Megan lifted her eyes. "They already knew," she said. "The message is not discovery. It is permission." Mercer's gaze narrowed. Permission from who, she asked. Megan's fingers tapped the table once soft. "The ones who benefit," she said. Silence pressed in. In the hall outside, a cart rolled by with squeaky wheels. Someone's laughter floated past, then faded. The contrast made the room feel smaller. Mercer pushed her chair back. "We are leaving this room," she said. "Now." Megan stayed seated. "I have a patient," she replied. Wynn's voice held a trace of impatience. "Your patient will be monitored." Megan's eyes stayed on Wynn. "He called my name on a table," she said. "You think they will not ask him questions again? You think he will stay quiet because you ask him to?" Wynn's expression tightened. He did not deny it. Mercer watched Megan for a long moment. Then she nodded once, reluctant but pragmatic. "We go to him," she said. "You speak to him, quickly, then we move." Megan stood. The chair legs scraped the floor, a harsh sound in the sterile room. She slipped the phone into her pocket. Her fingers brushed the golf tee without meaning to. Plastic, smooth, small. It steadied her more than it should have. They stepped back into the corridor. The hospital had not changed, but the way people moved had. Nurses slowed as they passed. A security guard lingered near a door he had never cared about before. 2 residents stood too close to a wall, pretending to read charts while they listened. Wynne walked beside Megan without touching her. Mercer followed half a step behind, eyes scanning corners the way her voice had scanned the report. Megan kept her pace even. She did not rush. Rushing made you look guilty. Rushing made you look hunted. They reached the trauma corridor. The doors to OR3 stood closed, the small window cloudy with condensation and movement. Through it, Megan caught fragments. Dr. Hale's hands, a resident's shoulder, the bright surgical light. Mercer reached for the handle. Megan stopped her with a look. "I go in alone," she said. Mercer's eyes held hers. "You do not get to decide that." Megan's voice stayed calm. "If you walk in behind me, he will read you as a threat," she said. "He is not a civilian patient. He will spike his pressure and rip lines. He will fight you. He will lose." Wynne watched Megan measuring. Then he gave Mercer a small nod. Mercer's mouth tightened, but she stepped back. Megan opened the door and went in. The copper smell hit again, immediate and intimate. The room was quieter now. The frantic urgency had settled into controlled work. Sutures were nearly done. Lucas lay propped, slightly pale, but steadier eyes open. He tracked movement the way a man tracked exits. When he saw Megan, something in his face loosened. "You okay?" he rasped. Megan moved to the bedside. She kept her hands busy. That was how she kept her voice steady. She checked the IV, then the dressing, then the monitor. "I am fine," she said. Lucas's gaze flicked to the door. He had seen Wynne's uniform through the glass. He had seen Mercer's posture. He understood the shapes of authority. "They are giving you trouble," he said. Megan did not answer directly. "You are stable," she replied. "That is what matters." Lucas swallowed. His throat worked around dryness and pain. "I did not mean to say your name," he said. Megan looked at him. Her expression softened by a fraction, then returned to neutral. "You did," she replied. "It is done." His fingers twitched against the sheet, wanting to grip something. "They told me you died," he said. "I carried that." Megan adjusted the drip rate slightly. "You should not have had to," she said. Lucas let out a small breath. "Neither should you." Behind them, Dr. Hale hovered as if he could not decide whether to speak. His posture was cautious now, not mocking. When Megan met his eyes, he looked away first. Tessa stood near the supply cabinet with a clipboard pressed to her chest. Her face held a discomfort that looked like guilt trying to find a place to land. Lucas's eyes stayed on Megan. "They will come," he said. "They always do." Megan leaned closer, voice low. "Then you stop helping them," she said. His brow furrowed. "You mean stop talking?" Megan's gaze held his. "I mean keep your heart rate down," she said. "I mean stay alive." Lucas gave a faint nod. A polite knock sounded at the door. 2 quick taps. "Not asking, informing." Megan straightened. She did not turn immediately. Mercer stepped in alone, closing the door behind her. She stayed near the wall, hands visible, body angled to appear less threatening. Lucas watched her with suspicion. His eyes hardened. "You done interrogating her?" he asked. "Interrogate me instead." Mercer's voice remained controlled. "We already did," she said. "On the way in." Lucas stilled. "Then you know why this happened." "We know what you believe," Mercer replied. Megan glanced up sharply. "Belief implies uncertainty," she said. Mercer met her gaze. "It also implies someone is still lying," she answered. Megan's fingers tightened around the edge of the bed rail, then released. She shifted her focus back to Lucas's monitor. A steady rhythm, a thin margin. Mercer's eyes went to the phone in Megan's pocket. "We need to move you now," she said quietly. Megan did not move. "I finish my rounds first," she replied. Mercer blinked once. "That is not negotiable." Megan's voice stayed flat. "It is," she said. "If I leave now, they know you spooked me. If I leave now, I become the story." Mercer watched her for a long beat. Then she nodded once, reluctant. 2 minutes, she said. Megan checked Lucas's vitals again, then the dressing. She leaned closer. "Do not sit up," she warned. Lucas's mouth pulled into a weak, stubborn curve. "You cannot stop me," he whispered. Megan's eyes stayed calm. "Watch me," she replied. Lucas's gaze drifted to Mercer. "You trust them?" he asked Megan. Megan did not answer with a yes or no. She answered with a different truth. "I trust what I can verify," she said. "Right now, that is your heartbeat." Mercer pressed 2 fingers to her earpiece again. The movement was small, but it pulled the room's attention. She listened, eyes going distant. Then Megan's phone buzzed again. A single vibration, short and sharp. Megan's hand went to her pocket without thinking. She pulled the phone out. A photo loaded on the screen. The hospital parking lot taken from a high angle. Her car silver parked near the far row, under a flickering light. The timestamp was recent enough to make her stomach tighten. A shadow sat near the driver's side door, not clear enough to identify, clear enough to confirm proximity. Lucas saw it over Megan's shoulder, his jaw clenched. "They are close," he said. Mercer's expression changed. Not surprise. Confirmation, the way someone looks when a suspicion becomes a coordinate. Wynn opened the door without knocking. He did not step fully in, but his presence filled the frame. Security reports an unknown team on the lower level, he said. Mercer's voice dropped. We did not leak her location, she said. Wynn's eyes narrowed, then someone else did. Megan stared at the photo. Her pulse stayed steady, but she felt the old switch flip the one that turned fear into clarity. She slid the phone back into her pocket. So what is the place, she asked. Mercer straightened. Lockdown exits, she said into her earpiece. Cover stairwells. Plain clothes only. No badges flashed unless necessary. Wynn's gaze flicked to Megan. This hospital does not need a firefight, he said. Megan's eyes were calm. It already has a battlefield, she replied. Lucas shifted as if to swing his legs over the bed. The movement tugged at his lines. His face tightened with pain, but the stubbornness remained. Megan stopped him with a look. You stay, she said. Lucas's eyes narrowed. I will not lie here while they take you, he rasped. Mercer's voice sharpened slightly. This is a hospital, she said. Not a combat zone. Megan did not look at Mercer. It is both, she replied. A commotion rose in the hall. Raised voices. A radio crackle. Footsteps running not the soft run of nurses, but the heavier run of security trying to sound brave. The door swung open, and a hospital administrator stepped inside, face-pale shirt collar, damp with sweat. He glanced at Wynn's uniform, then at Mercer, then at Megan. His eyes landed on Megan's badge and stayed there, like the letters had shifted into something else. There are men downstairs, he said. His voice shook. They say they are with Homeland. Mercer's head snapped toward him. They are not, she said, immediate and certain. The administrator swallowed. They asked for her by name, he added, nodding toward Megan, as if she were a hazard sign. Lucas's hand clenched the sheet. They found you, he whispered. Megan's shoulders stayed square. She looked at Mercer, then Wynn, then back at Lucas. The copper smell in the room felt stronger, as if the air itself knew something had crossed a line. Mercer pressed her earpiece again. Confirm IDs, she said. No one moves her without my authorization. Wynn's eyes stayed on the door, listening to the hall. They are inside the building, he said. Megan's gaze did not waver. Then they are close enough to make mistakes, she replied. The administrator backed toward the door, as if leaving the room could keep him out of what was coming. He paused, voice dropping to a whisper. They are insisting, he said. They are coming up. Mercer's face stayed hard. Hold them, she told him. Do not let them into the trauma corridor. The administrator nodded too fast and disappeared into the hall. For a moment, the room held a tight silence. The monitor beeped steadily. The ventilator hissed. Outside footsteps moved with a purpose that did not belong to a hospital at night. Megan reached up and smoothed the edge of Lucas's blanket as if the gesture could anchor him. Lucas watched her hands, then her face. You going to run? He asked. Megan looked at him, eyes clear. No, she said. Mercer's gaze flicked to Megan's pocket, to the phone, to the photo she had seen. We need to move, Mercer said. Megan's voice stayed calm. We move smart, she replied. Wynn's posture tightened as another burst of noise came from the corridor. A voice carried through the door, low and confident, not quite raised, as if it assumed obedience. Mercer's eyes narrowed. They are already talking like they own this floor, she said. Megan's hand drifted to her pocket for a fraction, not to pull the phone out, but to feel the hard edge of the golf tee again. She let it go. Outside the door, the hospital felt less like a building and more like a set of corridors that could be taken or held. Mercer stepped toward the exit body, angled ready to meet whoever was coming. Wynn stayed near the doorframe, listening. Lucas's breathing stayed controlled, but his eyes were alert. Megan remained by the bed, still and steady, as the sound of approaching footsteps filled the hall. The footsteps stopped outside the door. For a second, the room held its breath. Even the ventilator sounded louder, a steady hiss that made the silence feel thinner. Then a voice came through the corridor, smooth and certain. Federal business. We need access. It was not shouted. It did not need to be. It carried the assumption that people would move aside. Mercer opened the door and stepped out, keeping her biddy angled so she could see both directions of the hall. Wynn stayed just behind the frame, a quiet wall in dress blues. Megan remained inside by Lucas's bed, one hand resting lightly on the rail, eyes fixed on the doorway. Lucas watched the corridor like it was a ridgeline. Two men stood in the hall, both in dark jackets that looked like they had never seen a cafeteria spill. Their posture was wrong for a hospital. Too still, too balanced. Their eyes moved in short, efficient scans, not lingering on faces, lingering on angles. Behind them, a third man waited half a step back. He was older, maybe early 50s, with close-cut hair and a calm expression that never reached his eyes. He smiled at Mercer like a customer service rep who already knew the manager's name. Evening, he said. Homeland. We are here for Megan Hart. Mercer's voice stayed flat. Show credentials. The man lifted a badge, just long enough to flash metal and seal, then lowered it. He did not let her read it. The gesture was practiced, designed to satisfy people who wanted to be satisfied. Mercer did not move. Again, she said. His smile thinned. We do not have time for theater. Wynne stepped forward into the hall. The corridor light caught his rank stripes. The men's eyes flicked to them, then away as if acknowledging a variable they preferred not to engage. This is a medical facility, Wynne said. Identify your agency and your supervisor. The older man turned his head, slightly still smiling. Commander Wynne, he said, as if they had met at a conference. With respect, your uniform does not outrank our paperwork tonight. Wynne's expression did not change, but Megan saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. He did not like being named by strangers. Mercer's gaze sharpened. How do you know his name? She asked. The man's smile widened just a fraction. We do our homework. Lucas made a low sound from the bed, something between a cough and a laugh. His eyes stayed hard. That is what they said last time he rasped, not quite loud enough to carry, but not quite meant to be private either. Megan looked down at him. Stay still, she said. I am still, Lucas whispered. I am just not asleep. Megan's hand tightened once on the bed rail, then released. She shifted her weight, preparing to move. Mercer did not take her eyes off the men. You are not cleared to be on this floor, she said. Step back, now. The older man's eyes flicked toward OR3, toward the fogged window, toward the shape of Megan inside. His smile did not change. We are not here for the patient, he said, echoing Wynne's earlier line with a smoothness that felt like mockery. We are here for her. The copper smell in the room seemed to thicken as Megan inhaled. Her pulse stayed steady. That old switch inside her clicked into place. Fear became focus. Focus became choice. She stepped past Wynne and Mercer and into the hall. The men's eyes found her instantly. Not surprised, just confirmed. The older man's smile turned polite again, as if he were grateful she had made it easy. Megan Hart, he said. Thank you. Mercer's head snapped toward Megan. Get back inside, she warned low. Megan did not look at Mercer. She kept her eyes on the men. You asked for me, she said. The older man nodded. We have questions. Megan's mouth pulled into something that was not a smile. You do not, she replied. The corridor around them felt different now. Nurses who had been moving along the far end slowed and stopped. A security guard hovered near the stairwell door, hand near his radio not pressing it yet, waiting for permission from the air. A pair of residents lingered by a supply cart, pretending to check labels. Their eyes were wide above their masks. They did not understand what they were seeing, but they could feel the pressure of it. Wynne stepped slightly to Megan's left, careful not to crowd her. Careful not to leave her alone either. Ms. Hart is under federal protection, he said. The older man let out a small breath, almost amused. Federal protection, he repeated. From whom, Commander? From the federal government. Mercer's voice sharpened. You are not on my roster, she said. State your names. The older man's eyes slid to Mercer. Agent Mercer, he said. You are making this harder than it needs to be. Mercer's posture stiffened. Stop saying names you have not earned, she replied. For a moment, the older man's smile faltered. It returned quickly, thinner than before. We are not here to fight, he said. We are here to escort Ms. Hart to a secure location. Megan's eyes stayed calm. Escort, she repeated. That is a friendly word for a one-way trip. The older man tilted his head. You are in the middle of something you do not understand. Megan took a small step forward, just enough to close distance, just enough to claim space. I understand exactly what it is, she said. His eyes studied her face, searching for uncertainty. He did not find it. He shifted tactics. Ma'am, you have been through a lot, he said, voice softening. Let the professionals handle this. Megan's gaze did not move. I am handling it, she replied. A faint crackle came from the ceiling speaker. Static, brief, and rough, like a match struck and snuffed. Then silence again. The older man's eyes flicked upward quick, then back to Megan. He did not like that anyone else might notice the sound. Mercer pressed her radio. Security hold the corridor, she said. No one enters OR3. A thin voice answered through static. Copy. We are trying. The older man smiled again, and it was the first time the smile looked honest. Not kind. Honest. You are having comms issues, he said. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Are we, she asked. The older man pulled a phone from his pocket. Not rushed, not dramatic. He tapped the screen once. The lights in the corridor dimmed slightly, just enough to make the air feel wrong. The monitors on the wall outside the OR flickered, then froze on the same green line and numbers. The digital clock over the nurses' station stalled. The hum of the building changed pitch, as if someone had placed a hand over the hospital's mouth. A nurse at the far end gasped. A security guard looked down at his radio and pressed the button again and again. Nothing. Lucas's voice carried from inside the room, rough and certain. There it is, he said. They like to turn the world off. Megan's eyes stayed on the older man. Cute, she said. Mercer's face tightened. They are jamming internal systems, she muttered. Wynn's hands curled into fists at his sides, then relaxed. He kept his voice even. "This is a federal crime," he said. The older man shrugged, almost apologetic. "So is breathing without permission, depending on who is writing the report." That line landed. Megan felt it settle behind her ribs, heavy with memory. Mercer took one step forward. "You will stand down," she said. The older man's gaze slid past Mercer, past Wynn, to Megan again. He spoke as if Mercer were a noise. "Ms. Hart, come with us. Now." Megan did not move. Behind her, she heard a soft rustle, the sound of Lucas shifting. He was pushing himself up a few inches, trying to sit despite pain. The IV line tugged. The monitor, frozen, did not react. That was worse than any alarm. Megan lifted a hand without looking back. 2 fingers, a small signal. Lucas stopped moving. He held still, breathing, controlled, eyes bright with anger. The older man watched the exchange with interest. "He listens to you," he said. Megan's voice stayed flat. "He knows what happens when you ignore the person keeping you alive," she replied. The older man's smile tightened. "There are witnesses," he said, glancing around the corridor. "That is inconvenient." Megan followed his glance. Nurses pressed against walls. Residents stared. A janitor with a mop paused in a doorway, mouth slightly open, eyes flicking from faces to badges to the frozen monitors. Megan looked back at him. "Too many," she said. The older man's eyes softened, not with kindness, with calculation. "Witnesses forget," he said. "They get tired. They get confused. They do not want trouble." Mercer snapped, "That is a threat." The older man did not look at her. "That is reality," he replied. Megan's tone stayed calm. "Reality is also recorded," she said. The older man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you have something on you?" he asked. Wind shifted subtly, blocking a direct line of sight from the men to the OR door. His body language said, "Do not test me," while his face said nothing. Mercer's hand moved toward her waistband, not drawing anything, just resting there, a reminder that she was not unarmed even in a hospital. The older man's 2 companions fanned out a fraction silent, creating angles. Their movements were small and clean, coordinated without words. Megan felt the corridor like a chessboard. She could see the line from stairwell to nurse's station. She could see the distance to the fire doors. She could see the camera bubble in the ceiling corner, its tiny black eye staring down. She could also see the fear in the staff. The fear was loud. Megan took another step forward, placing herself squarely between the men and the OR door. "You do not get to take me," she said. The older man's smile finally faded. "You are not in control," he replied. Megan's eyes stayed steady. "I am," she said, "because you have not touched me yet." For the first time, something like irritation crossed his face. "You think you are brave," he said. Megan's voice stayed even. "I think you are sloppy," she replied. "You came into a hospital with a lie. You froze equipment that keeps people alive. That is not clean. That is desperate." One of the younger men shifted his weight a small tell. He did not like being called desperate. At this tell. The older man's gaze slid to Mercer again. "Agent Mercer," he said, voice back to smooth. "You can avoid a mess. Step aside." Mercer's eyes did not blink. "No," she replied. A security guard at the far end of the corridor finally found his courage. "Sir," he called, voice cracking. "You cannot be here." The older man turned his head slightly toward the guard. His eyes held the guard for a beat. The guard stopped breathing for that beat. Then the older man looked away, as if the guard were a chair. Megan felt the hospital's fear rise. She felt her own calm sharpen. She reached into her pocket and wrapped her fingers around her phone. Mercer saw the movement and snapped, "Megan, do not." Megan did not look at her. "You said you needed proof," she replied, voice low. "I have something better than a story." Wynn's eyes flicked to Megan's hand. "Ms. Hart," he warned, quiet. "Be careful." Megan pulled the phone out and held it in her palm screen, dark for a moment. The corridor light reflected off the glass. The older man's eyes locked onto it. "You are bluffing," he said, though his voice had lost some of its ease. Megan's thumb hovered over the screen. She could feel the golf tee press against fabric inside her pocket as she shifted, a small, hard reminder that some things survived because they were small enough to hide. The older man took a half step forward. His companions tightened their angles. Mercer tensed, ready to move. Megan lifted her gaze to the older man's face and spoke softly, almost conversational. "You should have stayed dead," she said, repeating the text message back to him. "That was your line." His eyes narrowed. "You do not know what you are doing," he replied. Megan's thumb touched the screen. She hit play. The phone's speaker filled the corridor with a thin wash of sound, at first swallowed by the building's hum. Then the recording settled into clarity as if the air itself decided to listen. Radio clicks, breathing, wind, a rotor thump far away that never gets closer. A voice came through, calm and official. "Update coordinates. New grid. Confirm." Another voice, younger, tight with strain. "Lucas?" That reroute puts us in a kill box. A pause, and in that pause, the whole hallway seemed to lean forward. The calm voice returned. Proceed. Megan held the phone steady at chest height. The glow lit the underside of her fingers. Her face stayed still, but her eyes did not. She watched the men in front of her the way she watched vital signs waiting for the first sign of collapse. The older man's smile did not come back. It was gone now, replaced by something hard and bright. Mercer's head turned slightly as if she were triangulating the voice. Wynn's shoulders tightened, not from surprise, but from recognition of how much damage a few seconds of audio could do. In the far end of the hall, a nurse had both hands over her mouth. A resident stood with a chart in his hands, forgotten, his eyes pinned to Megan's phone like it was a weapon. The recording continued. A different voice, closer to the mic, rough with urgency. Air support is denied. Say again, air support is denied. Lucas again sharper. We need birds. We need medevac now. Then the calm voice, the one that did not sound like it belonged to the same world. Negative. Maintain position. Proceed. The older man's eyes flicked up to the ceiling cameras, then back to Megan. His jaw worked once. His two companions shifted small and silent, as if their bodies wanted to move before their minds did. Megan did not raise her voice. That is why I did not correct the report, she said. That is why I stayed quiet. Mercer's gaze snapped to her. You told me you had proof, and it was gone. Megan did not look at Mercer. She kept her eyes on the older man. I told you they thought it was gone, she replied. The older man took a half step forward, then stopped. He did not want to be the first to touch her while that audio existed in the air. You are making a mistake, he said. But his voice had lost its ease. Megan's mouth barely moved. I corrected one, she said. She tapped the screen again. Another clip rolled. This time the recording caught the background too. Shouting, a distant pop. The flat slap of boots on grit. Someone breathing too fast, too close to the mic. The sound of panic held inside discipline. Lucas's voice again. We are taking fire from the ridge. We need extraction. The calm voice returned measured. Your unit is compromised. There will be no extraction. The hallway went so quiet that even the frozen monitors seemed louder in their silence. Dr. Hale's door window fogged with movement behind it, but he had stopped working. Megan could feel it. The room inside had paused, drawn by the sound. She did not turn around. She kept the line between the men and the OR. The older man's companion, the one on the right, swallowed. It was a tiny sound, but Megan heard it. Fear always made noise if you listened. The older man's eyes narrowed. Turn it off, he said. Megan's gaze stayed flat. No. He took another half step. His companion mirrored him without looking. Their coordination was clean. Wynn's voice cut through, steady. Do not, he said low. The older man ignored him. He moved one hand, not reaching yet, but signaling. Megan lifted the phone slightly higher, like a flare. If you touch me, she said, it goes out to more places. The older man's eyes flicked to her phone, then to her face. You are bluffing. Megan's thumb swiped. The screen showed a list of files, folders, timestamps. She did not explain it. She did not need to. She only needed him to believe there was more than one copy. It is mirrored, she said. Multiple drops. Oversight. Civilian. Military. It does not live only on this phone. Mercer's breathing changed. She did not speak, but Megan felt her attention lock in. That look was not doubt. It was the sudden realization that Megan had not been surviving by luck. The older man's lips pressed thin. You think committees will save you. Megan's voice stayed even. I think witnesses change the math, she said. He glanced around the corridor. Nurses, residents, a janitor still holding his mop like a shield, a security guard frozen near the stairwell, eyes wide, radio useless in his hand. The older man's gaze returned to Megan. He seemed to measure her, then measure the room again, as if weighing how much force would be required to erase this moment. The calculation did not land where he wanted. From somewhere below, a sound began to rise. Not the hospital's soft alarms, not the beeping that belonged to monitors. This was outside noise, heavier and closer, a layered chorus of sirens and boots and shouted coordination. Mercer pressed her earpiece again, though the system still felt strangled. Say again, she murmured half to herself. The older man heard the sirens too. His eyes hardened. You called them, he said. Mercer's voice was sharp. Not me. Megan did not claim credit. She only held the phone and let the audio keep talking for her. The lights in the corridor flickered once more, then steadied. The hum of the building shifted. A monitor blinked, then stuttered back to life. The digital clock over the nurse's station jumped forward like it had been holding its breath. Static hissed from the ceiling speaker, then cleared. Security to surgical corridor? A voice said, shaky. But present, units are on scene. The older man's shoulders tightened. His companions drew closer without touching him, forming a tight triangle. Their eyes moved faster now. Wynn stepped forward just enough to claim space beside Megan. His voice did not rise. "Stand down," he said again. The older man's jaw clenched. "You have no idea what you are stepping into," he replied. Megan finally looked at him in full direct. "I do," she said. "I stepped into it years ago." The sirens grew louder. Footsteps thundered up the stairwell. The stairwell door slammed open at the far end of the hall. Uniformed officers spilled into the corridor, weapons drawn, but controlled voices overlapping in clipped commands that snapped the air into shape. "Hands, now. Down on the ground. Do it." Nurses backed against walls. A resident dropped his clipboard. The sound echoed off tile. The older man lifted his hands slowly, not panicked but angry. His companions hesitated for half a second, then followed. Their confidence had drained into something else, something that tried to look like strategy but sounded like surrender. Mercer stepped forward, badge finally visible, voice sharp. "These individuals are not cleared for this facility," she said. "Detain them." One of the officers moved in cuffs, clicking. The older man's eyes stayed on Megan, as if he wanted to burn her face into memory. "This will not end how you think," he said. Megan's expression did not change. "It already ended," she replied. The older man's mouth twitched, almost a smile, but it was a bad one. He let the officers turn him, his shoulders stiff, his gaze still pinned to her until the angle broke it. As the men were led away, the corridor seemed to exhale. People blinked like they were waking up. A nurse's knees buckled, and she grabbed the wall, laughing once in a thin, broken sound that could have been relief or shock. The monitors along the wall rebooted. Screens repopulated with numbers. The fluorescent lights returned to full brightness. The hospital's hum settled back into its usual rhythm, as if it could pretend nothing had happened. Mercer stood very still, watching the intruders disappear around the corner. Then she turned to Megan. "You planned that," Mercer said, not a question so much as a realization. Megan slid her phone into her pocket. Her fingers brushed the green golf tee again. It was still there, stubbornly ordinary. "I prepared," Megan said. Wynn looked at her, his expression unreadable now. Respect lived near the surface, but so did concern. "How long have you carried that recording?" he asked. Megan's gaze drifted to the OR door. Through the fogged window, movement resumed. Hale's hands returned to work. The patient needed closing. The patient needed quiet. "Long enough," Megan said. Mercer's eyes narrowed. "You told me you had nothing." Megan met her gaze. "I told you what was safe to say in a room with doors," she replied. Mercer held her stare, then looked away first. She pressed 2 fingers to her earpiece, voice back to crisp. "Sweep the lower level," she said. "Check parking. Get eyes on her vehicle." Wynn nodded toward OR3. "Your patient," he said. Megan moved toward the door, then paused. The corridor staff watched her like she had become a different category of person. The same scrubs, the same badge, but the laughter from earlier no longer fit in anyone's mouth. Tessa stood near the supply cart, eyes wide, face pale. She looked like she wanted to speak, and did not trust her own voice. Dr. Hale hovered inside the OR, caught between pride and the undeniable fact that he had almost lost a man. Megan opened the door and stepped back into the copper-warm air of Trauma OR3. Lucas's eyes were open. He tracked her immediately. "You did it," he rasped. Megan moved to his bedside and checked the lines with gentle precision. "Stay still," she said. Lucas's mouth pulled into a weak curve. "You stayed dead just long enough," he whispered. "That is what you do." Megan did not answer. She smoothed the tape at his wrist, careful, almost tender. Outside the curtain, the corridor still buzzed with voices and boots, but inside the room, the monitor beeped, steady, a thin, stubborn line of normal. Wynn's voice carried through the doorway, controlled. "We need to talk," he said. Megan kept her eyes on Lucas's vitals. In a minute, she replied. Mercer stood in the doorway watching Megan's hands, then Lucas's face. Her expression held the weight of decisions that did not belong in hospitals. Megan washed the copper from her gloves in a basin, the water swirling pink, then clear again. The smell stayed anyway, faint and stubborn, like truth. When she looked up, Mercer and Wynn were still there waiting without pushing, as if they had learned that Megan moved only when she chose to. Mercer spoke softly, almost careful. "You are on their radar now," she said. Megan dried her hands. Her eyes stayed calm. "I have been there for years," she replied. Mercer did not argue with Megan's calm. She only nodded once, as if marking a box on a checklist that had never been written on paper. "Then we treat tonight as exposure," Mercer said. "No more pretending you are invisible." Wynn stood at Megan's side, eyes on the corridor where officers were still moving intruders down the hall. The hospital had resumed its noise, but it sounded forced, like a room full of people trying to breathe quietly. Megan glanced back into Trauma OR3. Dr. Hale had returned to the incision with careful hands. The residents moved as if their bodies had learned humility in 10 minutes. Tessa kept her eyes on the instruments, not on Megan, like looking directly might burn. Lucas lay still, his eyes open, his face pale under the light. When Megan looked at him, his gaze tightened, an unspoken question pressing against his teeth. She stepped closer to the bed and checked his lines again. Her fingers moved with the same quiet precision as before, but the feeling under her ribs had changed. The copper smell was still there, but now it mixed with another scent, faint like rain, trapped in the fabric of uniforms that had just passed through. "You did not have to stand up," Megan said softly to Lucas. His voice was rough but steady. "You did not have to either." Megan smoothed the tape on his forearm. "Rest," she said. "Save your anger for later." Lucas's mouth shifted, as if he wanted to smile and could not afford it. "I have plenty," he whispered. Behind her, Dr. Hale cleared his throat. "Nurse Hart," he said, formal. Too formal. "Your assessment earlier was correct. We are stable." Megan looked at him. Hale's eyes flickered away from hers, then returned. The arrogance was gone. Something cautious had taken its place. "Keep him warm," Megan said. "Do not let the pressure drift. He will look fine and then drop." Hale nodded. Understood. Tessa stepped closer, clutching a chart. Her voice came out quieter than Megan had heard it all night. "Megan," she said, then paused as if testing whether she had the right to use her name. "I am sorry." Megan held her gaze for a beat. She did not offer comfort. She did not punish her either. "Do your job," Megan replied. "That is all." Tessa nodded quickly, eyes shining with something she refused to let fall. Mercer waited by the door, patient but firm. When Megan finished checking Lucas one last time, Mercer opened the door and guided her into the corridor, keeping her Bonnie between Megan and anyone who might try to get close. They moved through a ring of uniforms, badges, radios. This time the radios worked. The building's hum had returned to its usual pitch, but Megan still felt the earlier silence in her bones like a cold spot the heater could not reach. Wynn led them to a small administrative office away from the trauma bay. It smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. A single lamp on a desk cast a warm circle that did not match the fluorescent hall outside. A hospital administrator sat behind the desk, hands clasped too tightly. He looked at Megan as if she were an event, not a person. "We have patients and staff frightened out there," he said, trying for authority and landing on anxiety. "I need to know what is going on." Mercer placed her badge on the desk. She did it slowly, letting the metal catch the lamplight. "Federal matter," she said. "It is contained. Your staff is safe." The administrator's eyes darted to Megan. "They asked for her by name," he said. Megan kept her expression even. "They were wrong," she replied. The administrator opened his mouth, then closed it. He did not know what to do with someone who did not explain herself. Wynn leaned against the wall, arms folded. "We will need a private room for Ms. Hart," he said. "No record in the hospital system. No notes, no visitor logs." The administrator blinked. "That is not how the hospital works." Mercer's voice stayed calm. "It is tonight." The administrator's shoulders sagged. He nodded, defeated by a kind of authority he could not compete with. When he left, Mercer turned to Megan. The room felt smaller, without the administrator's nervous energy. "I want your statement," Mercer said, "while your memory is fresh." Megan's eyes did not soften. "My memory is not the problem," she said. Mercer sat across from her. She slid a yellow legal pad onto the desk, uncapped a pen, and waited. The waiting was its own pressure. Megan looked at the pen, then at Mercer. "You are writing," she said. "That means someone plans to read." Mercer's expression did not change. "That is the point." Megan leaned back, the chair creaking. "If I speak," she said, "they will try to bury me again." Mercer's gaze held hers. "They already tried," she replied. "Tonight they tried in a hospital hallway, in front of witnesses. That is not subtle." Wynn added quietly, "They made a mistake coming here." Megan looked at Wynn. "They did not come here for the hospital," she said. "They came here because I was here." Mercer's pen hovered over the page. "So tell me," she said, "what was the first moment you knew Salt Lantern was compromised?" Megan did not answer immediately. She stared at the desk surface, at a coffee ring someone had left years ago. It looked like a bruise on the wood. "Coordinates," Megan said finally. "They changed the grid. The change came too clean, too late. Like someone wanted us in a specific place." Mercer wrote without looking down. Her hand moved fast, practiced. Wynn's voice was lower. "Who sent the change?" Megan's eyes lifted. "It came through channels that looked legitimate," she said. "That was the point." Mercer stopped writing for a beat. "Air support," she said. "Denied." Megan nodded once. "Denied," she repeated. No explanation that made sense. Wynn's jaw tightened. "And you recorded it." Megan's face stayed still. "I recorded what I could," she replied. Mercer's pen touched the paper again. "Where is the original?" she asked. Megan's mouth pulled into a thin line. "Not here," she said. Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is it safe?" Megan looked at the closed door. She listened to the hallway, to footsteps passing, to a distant elevator ding. "Safer than I am," she replied. Mercer did not push further. She wrote a few more lines, then set the pen down. "We will do this properly," Mercer said. Closed hearing, limited broadcast, controlled access. Megan watched her. Controlled by who? Mercer's eyes did not blink. By the people who want the truth on record, she said, and by the people who want to make sure it does not turn into a spectacle. Megan let out a slow breath. Spectacles get people killed, she said. Wynne glanced at his watch. We move her tonight, he said. Megan's voice stayed calm. I am not leaving my patient without coverage, she replied. Mercer's expression tightened. Megan. Megan leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Lucas Vaughn is alive because I was in that room, she said. If something happens to him now, you lose leverage, and I lose the only reason they have to pretend they are behaving. Wynne's gaze held hers. He considered it, then nodded once. We secure the corridor, he said. We assign 2 on him. No one speaks to him without Mercer. Mercer's jaw set, but she accepted it. Fine, she said. But you do not walk alone. Megan did not argue. She had already decided she would not run. She also knew the difference between running and moving with support. Hours passed in fragments. Megan returned to the trauma bay with Mercer at a distance and a uniformed officer posted where he could see both ends of the hall. The staff avoided Megan's eyes or held them too long. The laughter from earlier had vanished, completely replaced by a careful respect that felt like a bandage pulled too tight. Dr. Hale spoke to her in short, precise questions, only about the patient. Tessa worked quietly, her hands steady, her voice subdued. When Megan washed her hands, the water ran clear almost immediately. The copper smell stayed anyway faint and stubborn. Lucas drifted in and out of sleep. Each time his eyes opened, he checked the door first, then Megan. He did not ask more questions. He did not need to. His body had already learned the answer. Before sunrise, Mercer returned to the administrative office with a small folder and a sealed envelope. This is the notice, Mercer said. Time and location. You will be escorted. You will not be alone. Megan took the envelope but did not open it. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Wynne stood by the window, watching the sky lighten behind rain clouds. You wanted ordinary, he said quietly. You walked into a hospital and tried to be ordinary. Megan's eyes stayed on the envelope. I wanted work, she replied. Ordinary was a bonus. Mercer's voice softened just a fraction. This is not a trial, she said. It is testimony. Megan looked up. Testimony is a blade, she said. Someone always bleeds. Mercer did not deny it. She only said, be ready. The hearing room was not dramatic. It did not look like television. It was a beige space with a long table, a row of chairs, and a seal on the wall that felt too clean to be trusted. Fluorescent light hummed overhead. A pitcher of water sat untouched. The air smelled like paper and old ventilation. Megan sat at the table with Mercer nearby and Wynne behind her shoulder. Across the room, people in suits watched with careful faces, their expressions trained to reveal nothing. A recorder on the table blinked a steady red light. Megan reached into her pocket and took out the green golf tee. She set it on the table beside her hands. It looked absurd against the seriousness of the room. It also looked real. One of the officials cleared his throat. State your name for the record, he said. Megan's fingers rested near the golf tee without touching it. Her voice came out clear. Megan Hart, she said. I was the medic on Operation Salt Lantern. The red light on the recorder blinked steady. It did not judge. It simply kept time. Across the table, a man in a gray suit glanced down at a folder with her name on the tab, then up at her face. His expression was careful, practiced, neutral. The kind of face that could watch bad news without reacting.
Date of operation, he said.
Megan did not look at Mercer. She did not look at Wynne. She looked at the seal on the wall and spoke like she was reading coordinates off a map. September 9th, she said. Local time after midnight. A second official, older with tired eyes, leaned forward. Your unit was rerouted, he said. It was phrased as a prompt, but it carried a question underneath it. He wanted her to say it first. He wanted her to own the sentence. Megan's fingers rested near the green golf tee. She did not touch it yet. Yes, she answered. We received new grid minutes before we moved. From whom, the man asked. Megan inhaled. The hearing room smelled like paper and recycled air. No copper here, no rain. Just the dry scent of bureaucracy. It came through channels that looked legitimate, she said. That was the point. The man in gray flipped a page. He kept his eyes on the paper, as if the paper were safer than her. Air support was denied, he said. Megan nodded once. Denied. No medevac. No overwatch. A pen scratched in the silence. Somebody's watch ticked softly. A third voice spoke from farther down the table. You recorded operational communications. Mercer's posture tightened behind Megan barely. Wynne stayed still. Megan met the speaker's eyes. I recorded what I could, she said. Why the speaker pressed. Megan's mouth pulled into a thin line. Because the first thing people do after a mistake is rewrite the story, she replied. And because I could hear the way the orders sounded. The man in gray looked up for the first time. How did they sound, he asked. Megan's eyes did not soften. Like someone wanted us to proceed into a place we could not leave, she said. A silence settled thicker than the recycled air. Explain, the older official said. Megan's gaze drifted to the water pitcher. Clear water untouched, trembling slightly from the building's ventilation. She spoke anyway. They changed coordinates, she said. They pulled air support. When we took fire, they denied extraction. They called it compromised. They told us to maintain position. Mercer's voice came from behind her, quiet. And you stayed. Megan did not look back. We did what we could, she said, until doing what we could meant watching people bleed with no way to move them. The officials' faces held stillness, but the room shifted. A few eyes flicked toward the corner where the recorder blinked. Proof did that. It forced attention. The man in gray asked the question everyone had been circling. How did you survive? He said. Megan's fingers finally touched the golf tee. She rolled it once between her thumb and forefinger. Plastic, smooth, ridiculous, real. I moved the wounded into cover, she said. I kept pressure. I counted breaths. I kept the radio open, even after they stopped answering. The older official leaned forward again. You were declared killed in action, he said. No body recovered. No survivor listed. Megan's eyes held his. That was the clean ending, she replied. A younger woman in a navy blazer spoke from the side. Her voice was controlled, but there was heat under it. You are alleging intentional abandonment. Megan did not blink. I am stating what happened, she said. The woman's lips pressed together. Names, she said. Megan's voice stayed level. Motive does not change the outcome, she replied. It changes accountability. Wind shifted behind her, a small movement that sounded loud in the quiet room. Mercer did not move at all. The man in gray cleared his throat. You have audio, he said. You brought it forward. Megan's gaze went to the blinking recorder. It exists, she said. It is mirrored. The officials exchanged quick glances. Not panic. Calculation. The kind of calculation that decided whether a door stayed closed or opened. Play the segment, the older official said. A technician reached across the table and connected a small device. The room filled with the sound of radio clicks and breathing. Then the calm voice, the one that never belonged in that wind and grit, spoke again. Proceed. Megan watched the officials listen. Some flinched internally and hid it well. Some did not flinch at all. Those were the ones that concerned her most. When the clip ended, the air seemed to shift, as if the room had taken in a lungful of smoke. Thank you, the man in gray said. His voice sounded automatic, like he could not find anything else to say. Megan's eyes stayed steady. I did not come here for thanks, she replied. The older official folded his hands. We will adjourn, he said. Your testimony is now part of the record. Megan stood. Her chair legs scraped the floor. She picked up the golf tee and held it for a moment. Then she placed it back in her pocket. Mercer escorted her out without touching her. Wynne followed, quiet, watchful. In the hallway outside the building smelled different. Less paper, more coffee. A faint scent of rain carried in on someone's jacket. The door to the hearing room closed behind them. The click sounded final, in a way that made Megan's shoulders loosen by a fraction. Mercer walked beside her. You did what we needed, she said. Megan's gaze stayed forward. You did what you needed, she replied. Mercer's mouth tightened. You think this is still a cage? Megan glanced at her. I think cages come with polite language, she said. Wynne spoke quietly from behind. There are consequences coming, he said. Megan did not ask for details. The details were always messy. She had learned that mess could be delayed, not avoided. Back at St. Merrifield, daylight bled into the corridors, slowly dull and gray, behind rain clouds. The hospital felt tired, like it had stayed awake too long, and could not admit it. When Megan returned to the trauma floor, people shifted as she passed. Not laughter now. No sideways jokes. The respect in their eyes looked cautious, as if they did not know what to do with it yet. Dr. Hale stood at the nurse's station holding a chart, staring at it without reading. When he saw Megan, he straightened. Nurse Hart, he said. Then stopped. His voice dropped a level. Megan. She waited. Hale swallowed. I misjudged you, he said. The words came out stiff, but they were there. In the OR. Megan held his gaze for a beat. Keep your hands steady, she replied. That is what matters. Hale nodded once, almost relieved she had not made him grovel. He stepped aside, making space in a way he would not have the night before. Tessa approached behind him carrying supplies. She did not speak. She simply set a new box of sterile gloves on the counter near Megan, then walked away without looking up. Her shoulders were tense, but her hands were steady. Megan moved into Lucas's room. He was propped up higher now. Color better a bandage across his chest and tubing still in place. His eyes were clear. He looked like someone who had been through woolly hell and was deciding whether to joke about it. You look like you slept, he rasped. Megan checked his monitor. Stable. She looked at him. You look like you stayed alive, she replied. Lucas's mouth pulled into a weak grin. Took effort, he said. She adjusted his IV and inspected the dressing. Her hands moved with gentle precision. The copper smell was faint now, masked by clean linens and daytime air. Lucas watched her. They asked you questions, he said. Yes. Did you answer, he asked. Megan met his eyes. I said what happened, she replied. Lucas exhaled slowly. Good, he said. Then quieter, I am sorry I said your name. Megan's gaze stayed steady. You were fighting to live, she said. Names happen. Lucas's fingers twitched against the sheet like he wanted to make a gesture and could not decide which one belonged here. They come when you survive, he said. That is the rule. Megan nodded once. Then we changed the rule, she replied. A few days later, the uniforms stopped appearing on the trauma floor. The suits stopped leaning against walls. The hospital returned to its routines. It did not forget, but it learned to file the night away into a quiet corner. An officer in dress blues appeared once, not during a crisis, not with a squad behind him. He approached Megan at a workstation while she was finishing notes. Megan Hart, he said. She looked up. Yes. He came to attention and saluted. The motion was crisp. The corridor froze around it. 2 nurses stopped mid-step. A resident's pen hovered over a chart. Dr. Hale looked up from a monitor and stared. Lucas, still recovering but upright, watched from his doorway. His hand rose slow and painful and returned the salute with clean precision. Megan did not move at first. She swallowed once. Then she nodded small. The officer lowered his hand. For the record, he said, voice clear but not loud, the Navy did not stop looking for its medic. We were just looking in the wrong places. Megan's throat tightened. She kept her voice even. I did not come back for recognition, she said. I know, the officer replied. That is why it matters. He turned and left as quietly as he had arrived. The corridor exhaled. People pretended they had not watched, then failed at pretending. Megan went back to her notes. Her hands did not shake, but they felt heavier than before. Weeks later, Norfolk morning light came in clean and pale, filtered through low clouds. Rain had washed the streets into a shine. Megan stood outside a modest building near the waterfront. The sign above the door was simple. Harbor Light Veteran Urgent Care. No grand opening banner. No cameras. Just a glass door, a new lock, and the smell of fresh paint mixed with coffee. Inside, the waiting area held practical chairs, a water cooler, a bulletin board with resources pinned straight. A few people sat quietly. Some stared at their hands. Some stared at the floor. Nobody stared at each other for long. Megan moved through the space, checking supplies. Gauze stacked, tourniquets in a drawer, clean blankets folded. A small radio sat on a shelf behind the desk, switched off. She kept it anyway. A door opened and a familiar step sounded, measured slightly uneven. Lucas Vaughn walked in without assistance. He wore jeans and a jacket that looked too light for the damp air. His posture still carried pain, but his eyes carried more than pain now. He scanned the room out of habit, then found Megan and held her gaze. You built it, he said. Megan nodded. It needed to exist, she replied. Lucas took in the sign, the chairs, the quiet people. They will be safer here, he said. Megan's eyes moved across the waiting area. A man with a shaved head rubbed his palms together like he could warm them that way. A woman in a hoodie stared at the exit as if she needed to know it stayed open. A younger guy bounced his knee, jaw clenched, fighting a war nobody else could see. So will the quiet ones, Megan said. Lucas stood beside her at the desk. You still save people the same way, he said. Megan glanced at him. What way is that, she asked. Lucas's mouth pulled into a small smile. Like it is not about you, he replied. Megan let out a soft breath. It was close to laughter, but not quite. That is the only way I know, she said. Lucas shifted his weight, then glanced toward the door, as if listening for something that never came. When he looked back, his expression softened. You got your name back, he said. Megan's gaze stayed on the room. I got my work, she replied. Lucas nodded once, accepting that answer. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. You keeping that thing, he asked, nodding toward Megan's pocket. Megan's hand went to the fabric without pulling the object out. Yes, she said. Lucas's eyes held hers. Good, he replied. Then he opened the door and stepped into the damp morning. The day moved on. Patients came through. Some with sprains, some with fevers, some with hands that shook when they tried to sign forms. Megan worked the way she always worked, steady, quiet, exact. She spoke when she had to. She listened when that mattered more. That evening, after the last patient left, Megan wiped down counters and checked locks. The building settled into silence, not the heavy silence of a room waiting for violence, but the gentle silence of a place allowed to rest. She stood by a small shelf near the desk where keys and pens lived. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the green golf tee. Plastic smooth, ridiculous. She set it on the shelf beside her keys. For a moment, she stared at it, then looked toward the waiting room, empty now, chairs lined up floor clean. The air smelled like coffee and disinfectant and faint sea salt carried in on people's clothes. She turned off the lights and walked to the door. The lock clicked. Outside the waterfront, wind moved through the street, damp and cool, carrying the smell of rain and distance. Megan stood for a beat, with her hand on the door, listening to the quiet. Then she walked away from it, slowly, not running, not looking over her shoulder. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.